Have you ever wondered what you would do if faced with 10 starving children, their eyes hollow from hunger, their tiny hands clutching one another in fear, in the heart of a dusty frontier town? Hannah Calder, widow, long thought to have given up on the world, did the unthinkable. She stepped forward at Dry Creek Market and bought every single one of them. To the townsfolk, it looked like madness. To the sheriff, it looked like trouble. And to the children, it was a terrifying gamble between salvation and another kind of captivity. But here's the question that lingers. What would you have done in her place? Would you have turned away, convincing yourself it wasn't your burden? Or would you have risked everything, your land, your name, your future, to claim lives that the world had already discarded as Hannah's wagon rolled out of town? Whispers of judgment followed her. No one could imagine the secrets waiting at Whispering Pines Ranch, or the choices that would test not only her strength but her heart. Stay with us as we uncover a story of sacrifice, redemption, and the unexpected power of love. And before we begin, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so more hearts can join us on this journey. She stood in the middle of Dry Creek Market, looking as if she had long since surrendered her fight with the world. Her black dress, faded from years of wear, hung loosely on her frame, and her hands trembled slightly as she counted out silver coins. 10 children, gaunt and hollow-eyed, clung together behind the wagon of Silas McGraw, who offered them up like livestock for sale. Few folks in Dry Creek bothered to interfere anymore. Misery was cheap and always in ready supply. The morning sun burned against the dusty square, casting long shadows across the crowd that had gathered to watch. Hannah Calder, a widow most folks had written off as bitter and spent, walked straight to Silas' wagon without a word. The children shrank back, their faces streaked with dirt and fear. Some could not have been older than 6, their arms no thicker than fence rails, their clothes nothing more than rags. "He'll take all 10, Hannah declared. Her voice rang across the square, sharp as a rifle shot. Silas nearly swallowed his chew. "All 10, Mom. That's a heavy load you're talking about. They'll need feeding, a roof. Care I said all 10. Hannah cut him off. She pulled a leather pouch from beneath her shawl, the weight of it obvious from the dull clink of silver within. "Name your price." The market grew silent. Sheriff Elias Hart stepped forward, sunlight glinting off the badge pinned to his vest. "Mrs. Calder," he said evenly, "what exactly do you plan to do with 10 hungry mouths? Your land barely carries you as it is." Hannah met his gaze without blinking. "That's my business, Sheriff," in the crowd. Amos Fletcher leaned toward his wife and muttered loud enough for all to hear. "Poor souls, trading one misery for another. That woman's been colder than December since her husband passed." Hannah heard him. She let no answer escape her lips, but her jaw tightened. One by one she dropped silver coins into Silas McGraw's palm, each metallic clink echoing across the square. The children stared, torn between dread and desperate hope. Did this severe-looking woman mean salvation or another kind of captivity? "There's your money," Hannah said at last. "They're mine now." Silas grinned, his teeth stained and yellow. "Pleasure doing business, Mom. I reckon you'll get your worth out of them before winter hits." One child, a girl of about 8 with tangled brown hair, dared to step forward. Her voice was barely more than a whisper. "Are you going to hurt us for the first time?" Hannah bent down to eye level. Her stern expression softened, just for a flicker. "What's your name?" Child, Lily May," the girl replied. "Well, Lily May," Hannah said gently. "He'll tell you something no grown-up's likely told you before. You're going to be all right." The sheriff shook his head, disgust plain on his face. "Mark me, this won't end well. A lone woman with 10 young'uns, she's either lost her mind or hiding something none of us will stomach." Hannah led the children to her wagon, every step heavy under the eyes of the town. She could feel their stares burning holes in her back, judgment and suspicion riding on every whisper. Folks thought they knew her, thought they understood what grief had made of Hannah Calder. But they were wrong, and soon enough they would learn how wrong. The wagon creaked down the road toward Whispering Pines Ranch. The children huddled together in the bed, silent and watchful. Their eyes darted from Hannah's rigid back to the unfamiliar landscape rolling past. "Mom," Lily May's voice broke the silence. "Are we going to work the fields? Mr. McGraw said we'd be picking cotton till our fingers bled." Hannah's grip tightened on the reins. "There's no cotton on my land, child," a sandy-haired boy with a scar along his lip whispered. "Then what will we do you'll see soon enough." Behind them, dust rose on the horizon. Riders were coming fast. Sheriff Hart galloped up alongside, his face grim. "Mrs. Calder," he called, "we need to talk." Hannah drew the team to a halt. The wagon groaned in the quiet. The council's uneasy. The sheriff continued. 10 children is too much burden for one woman. We need to know they'll be treated decent, not driven to the bone." Hannah's tone turned flint hard. "And what business of yours is how I tend what's mine because they're not property?" Hart snapped. "They're children, human beings." "I know what they are," Hannah shot back, her voice edged like broken glass. The sharpness made a few of the little ones shrink, though she did not turn. "Perhaps I know better than anyone here." Amos Fletcher rode forward, flanked by other men from town. "Hannah, we've known you since you were a girl. This don't sound like you. Tell us true what's going on for an instant." Something flickered across Hannah's face pane. Memory, or both. Then it was gone. "What's going on," she said coldly, "is that I made a purchase, and am taking my property home." "Your property?" Hart's hand twitched toward the colt at his hip. The children stiffened, the youngest whimpering softly. Lily May wrapped an arm around her and whispered words of comfort. Hannah's shoulders straightened as though a weight had settled on them, a weight she alone intended to carry. Whatever her true reasons, one thing was clear to everyone watching that wagon on the Dry Creek Road. Hannah Calder was not a woman to be stopped easily. "You're talking about them as if they were cattle." Sheriff Elias Hart snapped, his voice sharp as the crack of a whip. The youngest child, a girl barely 5, burst into tears. Lily May pulled the little one close, whispering something soft and steady that eased the sobs. The sight tugged at Hannah Calder's chest, but her face showed no sign of weakness. "Sheriff," she said, her tone as cold as iron, "unless you can prove I've broken a law, I suggest you let me pass." Hart studied her features with a heaviness in his eyes, searching for the woman he once remembered before grief turned her heart to stone. "He'll be watching," he warned. "Any mistreatment, he'll step in." Hannah's eyes flared with sudden fire. "Arrest me then, Sheriff, for giving them food and a roof, for keeping them from dying on the streets." Hart had no answer. With a grunt of frustration, he yanked his reins, wheeled his horse around, and thundered back toward Dry Creek. Amos Fletcher and the other men followed, leaving only a cloud of dust behind them. The wagon rattled forward again. Lily May edged closer to the front bench, her voice timid. "Mom, why'd you really buy us?" Hannah kept her eyes fixed on the trail ahead. For a long time, the only sound was the creak of wagon wheels and the horses' hooves striking the hard ground. The children had nearly given up hope she would respond when her low voice finally reached them. "Sometimes," she said slowly, "the only way to save something is to own it first." She left it there, but what she did not share was the truth. Whispering Pines Ranch held secrets none of them yet understood, and those secrets would turn their notion of salvation upside down. Hours later, the ranch came into view. The old Calder homestead rose like a monument to better times. The paint had peeled away. Shutters hung at broken angles, and the roof sagged in places. But it was not the decay that unsettled the children most. It was the silence, an oppressive quiet that seemed to swallow every sound. Hannah climbed down from the wagon with stiff, deliberate motions. "Out," she ordered, "single file." The children obeyed, their bare feet pressing into the packed earth with small, nervous thuds. They clung together, 10 fragile figures surrounded by the wide, empty land, stretching endless in every direction. This way. Hannah led them toward a large structure standing behind the main house. Its heavy door groaned as she pushed it open. Inside, the children gasped. Instead of the foul, cramped quarters they had braced themselves for, they found rows of neat beds. Each one carried a clean blanket, a pillow, and a small chest at its foot. Sunlight filtered in through glass windows, bathing the room in soft gold. "I don't understand," Daniel whispered, his scarred lip trembling. "This looks like a home." Lily May finished, her voice hushed with wonder. Hannah's face gave nothing away. "Don't get too comfortable," she said flatly. "There are rules here, and they will be obeyed." She pointed toward a wooden board nailed to the wall, words written in steady hand. "Wake at dawn, breakfast at 6, work from 7 until evening, supper at 7, lights out at 8, no talking after dark, no leaving the property without permission, no questions about what came before." The youngest girl raised her hand, trembling. What kind of work? Hannah's gaze grew distant, as though she were staring at something beyond their sight. "The kind that needs doing," she answered at last. Before the children could ask further, a shadow lengthened across the doorway. They turned to see a tall, lean man framed in the light, his clothes fine yet road-worn, his smile as predatory as a wolf's. "Mrs. Calder," he said smoothly, tipping his hat. "I heard about your purchase. Quite the generous act." Every muscle in Hannah's body tensed. "Judge Thorne, I wasn't expecting you." "Oh, I keep track of interesting matters in these territories," he replied. His eyes swept over the children like a hawk sizing prey. 10 strong workers. That should push production along nicely. A chill swept down Lily May's spine. The way they spoke it was as if the children were nothing more than beasts of burden, invisible while the adults bartered their fates. The children need rest. Hannah cut in sharply. "They've had a long day." Thorne chuckled, the sound empty of warmth. "Of course. Rest well, little ones. Tomorrow, the real work begins." His boots echoed against the wooden floor as he left, each step carrying an ominous promise. Lily May glanced at Hannah. For just a heartbeat, she thought she saw fear in the widow's eyes. Fear, but of what? And what work could possibly need 10 children? Morning came too quickly. Hannah's boots struck the floorboards like a drumbeat, pulling the children from sleep. "Up," she ordered, her frame dark against the pale dawn light. They scrambled out of bed, still heavy with the strangeness of soft blankets and real pillows. Several of the youngest had cried themselves to sleep, their cheeks marked by dried tears. Hannah led them to a long table where bowls of steaming porridge waited. The children stopped short, stunned, more food than they had seen in weeks. "Eat quickly," Hannah commanded. "Work begins soon." The children hesitated only a moment before grabbing spoons, the warmth of the meal thawing something inside them. Yet for all the comfort of that first breakfast, questions hung unspoken over their heads. What was this work Hannah and Judge Thorne meant, and why did the thought of it make Hannah Calder, the coldest woman in Dry Creek, look as if she were afraid work begins in 15 minutes? Hannah Calder said as the children hunched over their bowls of steaming porridge. Her tone left no room for argument. The door creaked open, and with it came a sudden chill. Judge Thorne stepped into the room, his presence heavy enough to quiet even the clink of spoons against tin. His smile stretched wide, but there was no kindness behind it. "Good morning, children," he drawled. "I trust you slept soundly." None of them dared answer. They had learned long ago that adults who smiled too broadly were often the ones most dangerous. "Mrs. Calder," Thorne went on, "you'll expect the first shipment ready by week's end. My buyers are growing restless." At that word, Lily May's spoon froze in midair. Shipment. What sort of shipment needed children to complete? "They'll be ready," Hannah replied, her face unreadable. "Excellent." Thorne's eyes gleamed. "And if any of them prove troublesome, remember that Silas McGraw always has more where these came from." After he left, the air in the room felt colder still. When breakfast was done, Hannah led the children across the yard to a long wooden building. The heavy door opened with a groan, revealing rows of tables covered with fabric, thread, and sewing needles. The truth struck the children like a blow. "You'll be making garments," Hannah said. "Shirts, dresses, blankets. Each of you has a quota. Fail to finish, and you'll go without supper." Daniel, the boy with the scar along his lip, raised his hand timidly. "Mom, some of us don't know how." "Then you'll learn," she answered. The day dragged on as 10 small bodies bent over cloth and needles, fingers pricked raw as they fumbled through stitches. Hannah's sharp eyes missed nothing. She barked corrections and rapped knuckles when hands strayed. Once, she even smacked a boy's wrist when he tried to sneak a scrap of bread. But Lily May noticed something peculiar. When Hannah thought no one watched, her sternness cracked. She adjusted a younger child's grip, or quietly threaded a needle for the smallest girl. And later that afternoon, when Judge Thorne rode up to inspect, Hannah moved to stand between him and the children, blocking his view. "They're working," she said curtly. Thorne examined the neat piles of finished shirts, his expression curled into satisfaction. "Fine work. My buyers will pay handsomely for such craft." When he left, the tension eased, though exhaustion weighed heavy on the children's shoulders. By the time they slumped over their bowls of stew that night, eyelids drooping, most could barely lift their spoons. Lily May waited until the house had grown quiet. She crept out of her bed and padded to the porch, where Hannah sat alone, staring into the darkness. "Mom," Lily May whispered, "you should be sleeping." Hannah did not look at her. "I need to ask you something." Lily May's voice shook, but she pressed on. Are you going to sell us again?" For a long moment, the only sound was the night wind moving through the trees. Then Hannah finally spoke, her voice a thread of sound. "Child, there are things about this place you don't yet understand. Things that happened before you came. Then tell me," Lily May urged. Hannah turned at last. In the pale moonlight, Lily May saw the glisten of tears on her weathered cheeks. "I had a daughter once. She was about your age when the thunder of hooves cut her off. Sheriff Elias Hart rode into the yard with 3 deputies. Lantern light cast their faces in grim shadow. Behind them came Amos Fletcher and several townsmen, rifles resting against their saddles. Hannah Calder. Hart called, dismounting slowly, 'We need words.' Hannah rose to her feet, her back rigid. 'It's late. Sheriff, say your piece. Someone came to town tonight,' Hart said. 'Claimed they saw children working in your loom house past sundown. That's against territorial law.' 'That's a lie.' Hannah shot back. 'Maybe.' Hart allowed. 'But word is, Judge Thorne has been sniffing around, asking after finished goods. What sort of goods are you selling?' Hannah from the shadows of the porch. Lily May pressed against the doorframe, straining to hear. The other children had gathered behind her, wide-eyed and trembling. 'My business dealings don't concern you,' Hannah said flatly. Amos Fletcher stepped forward, his tone softer than the sheriff's. 'Hannah, we've known your folks near 20 years. Your daddy was an honorable man, and you were once a good woman. But this ain't right. These young ones deserve better.' Better. Hannah's voice cracked, her composure slipping. 'You want to talk about what they deserve. They deserve parents who didn't abandon them. They deserve meals and shelter. They deserve not to be traded in a market square like beasts of burden.' Hart's face hardened. 'Then why treat them like laborers?' Because Hannah faltered. Her mask of steel threatened to shatter. 'Because it's the only way I can.' The sound of pounding hooves silenced her. Judge Thorne rode into the yard, 2 gunmen flanking him. The lantern light caught his cold smile as he dismounted, boots crunching against the packed earth. 'Gentlemen,' he said smoothly, 'I hope there's no trouble here. Mrs. Calder and I have a business arrangement. I'd hate to see it interrupted.' The sheriff's hand hovered near his revolver. What sort of arrangement? Thorne's eyes gleamed like ice, the profitable sort. Behind him, the 2 hired guns shifted, their hands never far from their weapons. The children clung together, fear rising thick in the night air, and for the first time, Lily May realized the truth. They were not just workers, they were prisoners. And Hannah Calder, stern and unbending, wasn't the rescuer she had hoped for, at least not in the way the girl had imagined. But as the argument in the yard swelled, Lily May's sharp eyes caught something. Hannah's hand moved slowly beneath her shawl. For one terrifying second, Lily May thought she was reaching for a pistol. But when Hannah drew her hand out, it held not a weapon but a folded paper that gleamed in the lamplight. Her hands shook as she raised it high. 'This,' she said, her voice quivering yet filled with defiance, 'is the deed to Whispering Pines Ranch, the loom house, and every acre of this land.' Thorne's smug expression cracked. 'What nonsense is this?' Hannah's voice grew stronger with each word. 'You lied to me, Thorne. You told me my husband left debts, that unless I bent to your will, you'd take everything from me and sell these children into even darker bondage. But the truth is here in my hand. My husband owed you nothing.' Sheriff Hart stepped closer, his face grim. "Mrs. Calder, is that the original deed?" "It is," Hannah answered firmly. "Signed and witnessed. My husband never borrowed a penny. Judge Thorne has been extorting me, using these children as leverage." Thorne's confidence faltered, his polished veneer slipping. "You can't prove it. It's your word against mine." Hannah's eyes blazed. "Children, come out here, one by one." The 10 children crept onto the porch, their bare feet soft against the weathered boards. They gathered around Hannah like chicks around a mother hen, instinctively seeking her strength. "Tell them," Hannah urged Lily May. The girl swallowed hard, then spoke with quiet certainty. "She helped us with the sewing. She made sure we had extra food when we were hungry. And last night she was crying." "Lies." Thorne spat. His 2 hired men shifted uneasily, doubt creeping across their faces. Amos Fletcher, who had watched Hannah grow up, stepped forward. His voice carried sorrow as well as reproach. "Hannah, why didn't you tell us the truth sooner?" Her shoulders sagged under the weight of memory. "Because he threatened to kill them if I spoke. Said if I breathed a word, these children would vanish forever." Just like her voice broke. Lily May's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "Just like your daughter." The night air grew still. Hannah nodded, tears streaking down her cheeks. "My Sarah was only 7 when his men took her. Claimed she was payment for a debt that never existed. I never saw her again. And I will not," her voice hardened, "I will not let that happen to these children." Thorne laughed, but it was a brittle sound now, stripped of power, a touching tale, but it changes nothing. By law, they belong to me. I have contracts. Sheriff Hart's jaw tightened. "Contracts signed under threats don't hold weight." "You can't prove a thing," Thorne shot back. One of his hired men shifted uncomfortably. "Boss, maybe we ought to ride out. This is looking bad. Quiet. Collins." Thorne barked. The air in the yard grew taut. Every man waiting for the first spark. It came from a voice small but clear. Lily May stepped forward, chin high despite her trembling frame. "Has lying about the contracts, too." All eyes turned to her. "What do you mean?" Child Sheriff Hart asked gently. "I can read," Lily May said proudly. "Better than most grown folks. I saw the papers when he bought us from Silas McGraw. They said we were to work only until we turned 18. Then we'd be free, with wages saved for us." Thorne's face drained of color. The girl doesn't know what she's talking about. But Lily May's voice grew stronger, steadier. "I know exactly what I read. I even heard him tell Silas to tear up the real papers and write new ones." She pointed straight at Thorne, her finger unwavering. Sheriff Hart's hand moved closer to his gun. "Is that true?" Thorne sneered. "The word of a street orphan against mine. You'd take her side, Collins." The lanky gunman, who had ridden with him for years, nodded slowly. "She's right. Sheriff, we've been switching contracts across the western frontier. The boss has been holding children long past their terms, selling them off to mines and mills where no one asks questions." "You fool." Thorne snarled. "I'm done, boss," Collins said, shaking his head. "These are just kids." The second hired man stepped back, hand already edging toward his horse. "This isn't what I signed up for either. I'm riding out." Suddenly, Thorne was alone. He realized it too, his hand twitching toward the pistol at his hip. But Sheriff Elias Hart was quicker, his revolver flashing in the lamplight. "Don't even try it," Hart warned, His voice carried the kind of steel that left no doubt he'd pull the trigger. And then, from the porch, Hannah Calder's voice rose, firm and steady. "There's more you need to know." She gestured toward the loom house. "These 10 aren't the first children I've brought here. For 2 years I've been buying from Silas McGraw, not to use them, but to teach them, to give them skills to stand on their own one day." Amos Fletcher's eyes widened with dawning understanding. "The clothes, the goods, you've been selling them in Prairie Ridge, maybe Silverton?" Hannah nodded. "Every cent I earned has been set aside in accounts under the children's names. They aren't my laborers, they're my students, and when they're grown, they'll have money saved and trades learned." Lily May felt her chest swell with something she hadn't dared feel in a long time. Hope. Sheriff Hart frowned. "Why all the secrecy?" "Hannah, why let us believe the worst?" Her voice broke, raw and bare. "Because I failed my own daughter. Sarah was 7 when she was taken. I couldn't save her, but maybe I could save others. And if Thorne thought I was bending to his scheme, he left these children alone long enough for me to do it." "To what end?" Thorne demanded, though his bravado had slipped. Hannah's lips curved into the first smile the children had ever seen from her. "To gather the evidence that will see you behind bars until your last breath." The porch went silent. The children stared at her, their view of the stern widow shattering and rebuilding into something new entirely. From beneath a loose floorboard, Hannah drew out a small wooden box. Inside were neat bundles of papers, letters, and ledgers. She handed them to Sheriff Hart. "I've documented everything," she said, "every transaction, every threat, every child that vanished. I knew someday I'd need proof." Hart's face darkened as he flipped through the records by lantern light. This is enough to bury him. Thorne, desperate now, lunged toward the yard, but Collins blocked his path. "End of the road, boss." His voice carried finality. "I won't be part of this no longer." Within an hour, Judge Thorne was shackled in the back of the sheriff's wagon. The lantern light caught his twisted expression as he spat through the bars. "There are more. Dozens scattered across 3 territories. You'll never find them all." "Maybe not," Hart replied grimly, "but thanks to Mrs. Calder's records, well, find as many as we can." The wagon rattled off into the dark, leaving behind a heavy stillness. The children crowded close to Hannah, no longer shrinking from her but clinging to her presence. "What happens to us now?" Daniel asked, his scarred lip trembling. Hannah crouched down so she was eye to eye with each of them. "You stay here," she said softly. "You'll learn trades that'll carry you through life. You'll grow strong and safe, and when the day comes that you're ready to step out on your own, you'll have savings and skills to stand proud." Lily May stepped forward, arms wrapping around the woman she had once feared. "Thank you for not giving up on us." The mask Hannah had worn so long finally cracked. Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, "No, child, thank you. You've given me a reason to keep fighting." Amos Fletcher removed his hat, his weathered face heavy with shame. "Hannah, the town owes you more than we can say. We should have trusted you. You should have asked questions," she corrected gently. "But I understand. I made sure you wouldn't." Over the following months, Sheriff Hart worked tirelessly with Hannah's records, tracking down children who had vanished into Judge Thorne's network. By the time winter gave way to spring, 43 had been rescued. Silas McGraw was arrested, his vile trade dismantled. the territorial government, stirred by the scandal, passed new laws requiring every labor contract for children to be registered and monitored. No more secret sales, no more silent suffering in the shadows. Back at Whispering Pines Ranch, life began to take new shape. The Calder homestead, once silent as a tomb, rang again with laughter and lessons. The loom house became more than a workshop, it became a school. And though the road ahead was long, the children began to believe in something they had nearly forgotten, a future. The greatest transformation was not in the rescued children, but in Hannah Calder herself. The bitter widow, who had once seemed hollow and lifeless, was gone. In her place stood a woman who had found her purpose again, a woman who had remembered what it meant to hope. She expanded the loom house and brought in a proper school teacher, turning Whispering Pines Ranch into more than a refuge. It became a place where the abandoned and forgotten could learn, grow, and build new lives. Lily May, now 9 years old and reading at a level that surprised even the circuit judge, began teaching the younger ones their letters. Daniel, the boy with the scarred lip, discovered a rare gift for working wood. Before long, his hands shaped tables and chairs that impressed even the most seasoned carpenters in Prairie Ridge. On the first anniversary of their arrival at the Calder homestead, all 10 children presented Hannah with a quilt they had stitched together in secret. In its center, sewn with careful, uneven hands, were the words, "Home is where someone fights for you." Hannah hung that quilt above the fireplace where it stayed for the rest of her life. She never spoke of her lost daughter Sarah again, but sometimes the children would catch her gazing at the quilt with tears shining in her eyes. They were not tears of grief, but of peace. The lonely widow, who had once counted only sorrow, now measured her life by blessings. In saving 10 starving orphans, she had discovered the strength to save herself. And, in the end, what no one expected was that love not silver, not contracts, not threats would prove to be the strongest power in the western frontier. Sometimes, the most unlikely guardian angels wore the face of a stern widow with a broken heart and an unbreakable will. As we look back on Hannah Calder's story, we are reminded that the greatest battles in life are not always fought with guns or fists, but with courage, compassion, and quiet resolve. A widow who had every reason to close her heart instead opened it, and in doing so, she discovered that saving others often leads to saving oneself. For those of us who have seen many seasons of life, this tale strikes a familiar chord. We know what it means to face loss, to feel worn down by time, and to wonder if we have anything left to give. Yet Hannah shows us that even in the most broken chapters, there can be purpose. Acts of love, no matter how small, can ripple outward and change lives in ways we never imagined. Perhaps the lesson is simple but profound. It is never too late to choose compassion over despair, to offer hope where the world sees none, and to realize that our greatest legacy may be the lives we touch along the way. Thank you, dear friends, for sharing your time with us today. If Hannah's story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe so we can continue bringing you more tales of love, courage, and second chances on the frontier.